So let's talk about something that has genuinely kept me up at night. And I mean that in the best possible way. If you've been following From since the beginning, you already know that this is not the kind of show you can just casually watch while scrolling through your phone. It demands your full attention, and it rewards every single second of it. We're going to dig deep into everything this series has built across 3 seasons, what it all means, where it's heading, and why the anticipation for Season 4 is absolutely through the roof right now. Grab something to drink, get comfortable, and let's get into it. The basic premise of From sounds deceptively simple when you first hear it. A mysterious town somewhere in rural America. People arrive there by accident, usually while driving through what seems like a perfectly normal stretch of road. And once they're in, they cannot leave. No matter which direction they drive or walk, the roads loop back to the same place. The town holds them like a trap, and nobody who has stumbled into it has ever managed to get out. Simple enough, right? Except From takes that premise and layers it with so much psychological depth, supernatural complexity, and genuinely human drama that by the time you're a few episodes in, you realize this show is operating on a completely different level than you initially expected. What makes the premise so compelling is not just the physical impossibility of escape. It's everything that surrounds that impossibility. The town has rules. It has a history. It has its own internal logic that the residents are constantly trying to decode. And most importantly, it has creatures that come out after dark and make survival a very real daily concern for everyone living there. The combination of being trapped with nowhere to go and having to deal with genuine danger every single night creates a pressure cooker environment that forces every character to reveal who they really are. And that, more than any supernatural element, is where the show truly lives. The town itself functions almost like a character in its own right. It breathes, it changes, it seems to respond to the people within it in ways that suggest some kind of awareness or intention behind everything that's happening. Over 3 seasons, we've seen the town reveal its secrets slowly and deliberately, never giving too much away at once, always maintaining that sense of mystery while simultaneously rewarding careful viewers with genuine answers. It's a balancing act that very few shows manage to pull off, and From does it consistently. Now let's talk about the people at the center of all of this, because a show is only as good as the characters who inhabit it, and From has built one of the most genuinely compelling ensemble casts on television right now. At the heart of everything is Boyd Stevens, played by Harold Perrineau. And if you want to understand what this show is about emotionally, you need to understand Boyd. He's the sheriff of the town, the person who has taken on the responsibility of keeping everyone safe, and he carries that weight in every single scene. Perrineau brings an extraordinary combination of strength and vulnerability to this character that makes him completely magnetic to watch. Boyd is not a simple hero. He's a man who has made mistakes, who carries his own darkness, and who has had to evolve dramatically over the course of the series as the nature of the threat around him has changed. His arc across 3 seasons is one of the most satisfying character journeys in recent television, not because everything goes well for him. It absolutely does not. But because the growth is genuine and earned. Every shift in how he sees the town, how he leads, and how he understands his own role in the larger mystery feels like it emerges naturally from what he's experienced. Then there's the Matthews family, Jim and Tabitha, and their children, played by Eion Bailey and Catalina Sandino Moreno. They function as the emotional entry point for the series, the family that arrives in the town relatively recently, and through whose eyes we initially experience the horror of realizing there's no way out. But over 3 seasons, both Jim and Tabitha have evolved so far beyond that initial function that calling them entry point characters now almost feels reductive. They become fully realized people whose struggles and decisions feel genuinely consequential. Tabitha, in particular, has one of the most fascinating arcs in the entire series. Catalina Sandino Moreno takes her character to emotional places that are genuinely difficult to watch at times, in the best possible sense. There's a rawness to her performance that makes the more intense moments of Tabitha's journey feel completely real. And the questions the show raises through her character about perception, about memory, and about the nature of reality within the town are some of the most interesting the series explores. Jim has undergone perhaps the most dramatic transformation of any character in the show. The person we see in the later episodes of Season 3 barely resembles who he was when the family first arrived in the town, and Eion Bailey sells every step of that transformation with a commitment that is remarkable. The physical and psychological toll of their situation is written into every aspect of how he carries himself, and the moments where the old Jim briefly surfaces through the harder exterior that experience has built around him are genuinely moving. Jade, played by David Alpay, started as a character who seemed like he might be a relatively peripheral addition to the story, but has grown into one of the most important figures in the entire mythology of the show. His visions, which begin relatively early in the series and escalate dramatically as things progress, place him at the intersection of the personal and the cosmic, in a way that makes his storyline one of the most compelling threads in the entire narrative. Alpay plays the confusion, the terror, and eventually the strange kind of clarity that comes with accepting the impossible with a naturalism that keeps the character grounded even when the material he's working with gets genuinely surreal. Victor, played by Scott McCord, is in many ways the most mysterious character in the entire show. He's been in the town longer than virtually anyone else, and his fragmented relationship with his own memories and history makes him both a potential source of crucial information and a deeply unreliable narrator of his own experience. McCord plays Victor with a quality that makes it impossible to look away whenever he's on screen. There's something happening behind his eyes in every scene that suggests depths of experience and knowledge that the character is not quite able or willing to articulate fully. And that tension between what Victor knows and what he can actually communicate is one of the show's most consistently fascinating, ongoing mysteries. Sarah, played by Avery Conrad, is a character whose trajectory across the series has been one of the most polarizing and most genuinely interesting. Her actions in earlier seasons put her in a position of enormous complexity within the community, and the show has been admirably unwilling to resolve that complexity in any easy or comfortable direction. Conrad plays Sarah with a quality that makes her simultaneously sympathetic and deeply unsettling, which is exactly the right approach for a character who occupies such morally complicated territory. As the series has progressed, our understanding of what drives Sarah has deepened significantly, and that deepening has made her one of the most layered figures in the entire cast. Kenny, played by Ricky He, has been one of the quiet pleasures of the series from the beginning. He started as someone who seemed like he might be a relatively straightforward supporting character, but has grown into someone whose internal journey is just as rich and complex as that of the more obviously prominent figures. His relationship with Boyd, with his own sense of identity, and with the impossible circumstances of life in the town, has been developed with a care and a specificity that makes him feel genuinely three-dimensional. He is one of those characters who sneaks up on you, and by the time you realize how invested you are in him, you're already in very deep. Donna, played by Elizabeth Saunders, represents a particular kind of pragmatic resilience that the show treats with enormous respect. She's the person who focuses on making the day work, on keeping the practical elements of survival functioning, on not getting so lost in the bigger mysteries that the immediate realities get neglected. And the show understands that this kind of groundedness is not a limitation, but a genuine gift, especially in circumstances where it would be very easy to get completely lost in the incomprehensible. Donna is the anchor that keeps certain parts of the community functioning, and the show honors that role while also showing that even her pragmatism has its limits when the town decides to reveal certain things. Christy, played by Chloe Van Lanschut, occupies one of the most ethically complex positions in the entire community as the closest thing to a medical professional the town has. The decisions she's forced to make, the ethical lines she's asked to walk or cross, and the toll that all of it takes on her as a person have been developed with a sensitivity that makes her storyline one of the most emotionally resonant in the series. The show never takes shortcuts with the complexity of her situation, and that honesty makes the harder moments in her arc genuinely difficult to watch in the best possible way. Now, let's get into the production side of things, because From is also an extraordinary technical achievement that deserves recognition beyond just the storytelling. The show was created by John Griffin and produced through MGM+. And what Griffin has built here is something genuinely remarkable in its consistency and coherence. Creating a world with its own internal logic and maintaining that logic rigorously across multiple seasons while simultaneously expanding and deepening the mythology is an incredibly difficult thing to do. And From does it with a level of discipline that is rare in television. Griffin has spoken in interviews about approaching the show with a very specific vision of where the story is going and what the central mysteries mean. And this is evident in the way the show handles its revelations. Nothing in From feels like it was made up as they went along. The answers that emerge over the course of the series feel like things that were always going to be the answers, like the show is pulling back a curtain to reveal something that was always there rather than building a new structure to fill a gap. That difference in quality of revelation is enormous, and it's one of the most important reasons why From has maintained such a devoted following. The writing team behind the show has constructed a narrative architecture that is genuinely impressive from a technical standpoint. The way foreshadowing is used throughout the series, the way details introduced in early episodes pay off in later seasons in ways that feel both surprising and inevitable, The way multiple storylines weave together without losing their individual integrity, all of this speaks to an extraordinary level of craft and planning. This is the kind of writing that rewards multiple viewings because you keep finding things you missed the first time around, details that take on entirely new significance once you know where the story's going. The influences on From are interesting to consider because the show wears some of them relatively openly while transforming them into something distinctly its own. The comparison to Lost is inevitable and not entirely unfair, given that both shows deal with groups of people trapped in a mysterious location with supernatural elements and a complex mythology to decode. But From has a different relationship with its mystery than Lost did. It's less interested in the spectacle of the unknown and more interested in the psychological and social experience of living with the unknown indefinitely. The horror is quieter and more pervasive, less about dramatic supernatural events and more about the grinding weight of a situation that has no clear end. The influence of Stephen King is also detectable throughout the series, not in any specific story element, but in the overall approach to horror as a lens through which to examine deeply human experiences and fears. King, at his best, uses supernatural elements to externalize internal human struggles, and From does something very similar. The impossible situation of the town becomes a way of exploring how people handle fear, grief, loss of control, and the fundamental human need to make meaning out of chaos. These are themes that transcend genre and connect to universal experiences, which is a large part of why the show resonates so strongly with its audience. The visual approach to the series is one of its most distinctive qualities, and one that deserves serious attention. The cinematography of From has a quality that is immediately recognizable, even if you can't quite articulate what makes it distinctive. The light in the show always feels slightly off, as if the color temperature of sunlight in this particular part of the world is just a few degrees different from what you're used to. It's not an effect that draws attention to itself, but it contributes enormously to the persistent sense of wrongness that underlies everything in the town. The way the show uses darkness is particularly masterful. The night sequences in From are not simply dark. The darkness has a quality of presence, a weight and depth that makes it feel threatening in a very specific way. The production design and cinematography work together to create an environment where the boundaries between safe and unsafe feel genuinely meaningful, where the transition from day to night is not just a change in lighting, but a fundamental shift in the nature of reality within the town. The use of color throughout the series is also worth examining. There's a specific palette that has been established for the show that remains remarkably consistent across seasons, with shifts in emphasis that reflect changes in tone or in the emotional state of the narrative. The warm, slightly oversaturated quality of certain interior spaces contrasted with the cooler, more uncertain quality of outdoor environments creates a visual language that reinforces the thematic content without ever feeling didactic. It's the kind of visual intelligence that you absorb rather than consciously register, which is exactly how it should work. The sound design of From is another technical achievement that often goes underappreciated. The town has its own soundscape, a specific combination of natural and artificial sounds that is immediately identifiable and that contributes powerfully to the atmosphere. There are audio elements that have become associated with specific aspects of the mythology, sounds that trigger a particular kind of unease in viewers who have spent enough time with the show to have internalized its sonic language. This level of investment in audio design is relatively rare in television and is one of the elements that makes From feel genuinely cinematic in its ambition. The music of the series, composed by Robert Ellis Orrell and Brandon Roush, deserves its own extended discussion. The score of From has a quality that is perfectly calibrated to the show's emotional register, present and effective, without ever feeling manipulative or obvious. The themes associated with specific characters and situations have been developed with enough specificity to be recognizable while remaining subtle enough not to feel repetitive. And the way the score interacts with the sound design, the two elements flowing into and out of each other in ways that make the boundary between them pleasantly ambiguous, is genuinely sophisticated work. Now, let's talk about the mythology of the town itself, because it's one of the most fascinating constructions in recent genre television. The town is not simply a setting, it's a system with rules and history and an internal logic that operates consistently, even when that logic is not fully visible to either the characters or the audience. This consistency is crucial because it means that every revelation feels earned rather than arbitrary. When we learn something new about how the town works or why it exists, it fits into what we already know rather than contradicting it. The creatures that inhabit the town are one of its most distinctive elements, and the way the show handles them reflects a very smart understanding of what makes horror effective. The creatures are terrifying, not primarily because of what they do, but because of what their existence implies about the nature of the town and the situation of the people trapped within it. They follow rules, they have limitations, and gradually, over the course of the series, some of those rules and limitations become known to the residents, which creates its own complex dynamic. Knowledge of the enemy is useful, but in From, it also raises questions about the nature of the enemy that make the situation more disturbing rather than less. The symbolism that runs throughout the series is one of its richest aspects, and one that rewards the kind of intense analytical engagement that the show's fan community brings to it. The recurring visual motifs, the specific symbols that appear in the visions that certain characters experience, the patterns that emerge across different storylines and different time periods, all of this is clearly intentional and clearly part of a larger design. The showrunners know what these symbols mean. They have a key, and every season, a few more pieces of that key are made available to the audience, allowing a clearer picture to emerge while still maintaining the essential mystery. The visions are one of the most consistently fascinating elements of the show's mythology. Multiple characters across the series have experienced visions of various kinds, and the nature of those visions, what they show, to whom they appear, and what triggers them, is clearly not random. The patterns in the visions, once you start looking for them, reveal connections between different characters and different aspects of the town's history that suggest a level of intentionality behind everything happening in the town that is both fascinating and deeply unsettling. The show has been careful not to explain too much too soon, letting the viewer sit with the strangeness of the visions while gradually providing enough context to make them feel meaningful rather than arbitrary. One of the things that distinguishes from many other mystery series is the way it handles the pacing of its revelations. There's a temptation in this genre to either hold back too much, frustrating viewers who feel like the show is stringing them along, or to give too much away, deflating the mystery and removing the tension that makes the show compelling. From walks this line with impressive precision. The revelations come regularly enough that viewers feel rewarded for their attention, but each answer is calibrated to open up new questions rather than simply closing off existing ones. This approach requires a very confident and clear vision of the overall story, and the evidence of that vision is visible in how satisfyingly the pieces fit together, as more of them are revealed. The handling of time in the series is another aspect that deserves attention. Flashbacks are used throughout not simply as a way to provide background information, but as a structural element that is integrated into the thematic concerns of the show. The way the past and the present interact in the series reflects something the show is saying about memory, about the relationship between what has happened and what is happening, and about the way trauma and experience shape perception. These are not simply expository flashbacks. They're part of the show's argument about what it means to be a person who has lived through things they cannot fully understand. The community dynamics within the town have been one of the most consistently interesting aspects of the show from a sociological perspective. When you take a group of people who would never have encountered each other under normal circumstances and force them to survive together in a completely abnormal situation, you create the conditions for a fascinating social experiment. From is acutely aware of this and has used it to explore questions about leadership, authority, trust, and the way power operates within small communities under stress. The town of has developed its own culture over time, its own informal rules and hierarchies and traditions, and the way new arrivals interact with that established culture is a constant source of narrative richness. Boyd's leadership of the community is one of the central ongoing dramas of the series. The nature of leadership in an impossible situation is something the show explores with real complexity. Boyd is not a perfect leader, and the show never pretends he is. He makes mistakes. He keeps information to himself when perhaps he shouldn't. He acts unilaterally in ways that undermine the trust of those around him, and yet his commitment to the community's survival is absolute and genuine, which makes him both admirable and frustrating in equal measure. This complexity is what makes him such a compelling figure to follow across multiple seasons. The question of information and who has access to it is one of the ongoing tensions in the show's community dynamics. Knowledge in the town of is power in the most literal possible sense. Knowing which areas are safe, knowing how the creatures behave, knowing what helps and what hurts in the specific context of the town, all of this is genuinely life-preserving information, and the decisions about who shares what with whom and why are a constant source of ethical complexity. The show refuses to make any simple judgment about these decisions, presenting different perspectives and letting the viewer grapple with the genuine difficulty of the choices involved. Now let's talk about the fan community around because it's an important part of the experience of following this show. The people who watch are some of the most engaged and intellectually active viewers in television right now. The subreddits, the YouTube channels dedicated to frame-by-frame analysis, the podcasts that dissect every episode, all of this represents an enormous collective investment of intelligence and attention. And that investment is not misplaced. The show genuinely rewards this level of engagement with a depth of detail and intentionality that makes careful analysis genuinely productive rather than simply an exercise in speculation. There is something about From specifically that seems to attract a particular kind of viewer, someone who is not content to simply follow the plot, but who wants to understand the system, to decode the mythology, to find the connections between seemingly disparate elements that reveal the larger design. This type of engagement is exactly what the show is built for, and the relationship between the creative team and this community of analytical viewers is one of the most interesting dynamics in current television. The theories that have emerged from this community over the course of the series are genuinely impressive in their creativity and their rigor. Some have been confirmed by subsequent developments in the show. Others have been elegantly disproven, and many remain in the space of productive uncertainty, where they might be right or might be wrong, but either way they help illuminate aspects of the mythology that the show itself has not yet addressed directly. This ongoing dialogue between the show and its most engaged viewers is one of the things that makes From such a rich cultural object, not just a television series to be consumed, but something to be thought about and discussed. Speaking of what people are thinking about and discussing, the Season 3 finale of From set up expectations for Season 4 that are genuinely significant. The ending of Season 3 is the kind of conclusion that does not resolve things so much as it recontextualizes them, making clear that the nature of the situation is different from what we had understood, while raising questions that make the wait for Season 4 genuinely difficult. Without going into detail that would spoil things for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, what the finale does is essentially shift the level at which the central mystery operates. We move from questions about the nature of the town to questions about the nature of the system of which the town is a part. And that shift is enormous. The setup for Season 4 that the finale provides suggests that we are entering a phase of the story where more fundamental truths will become available. Not that everything will be explained or that the mystery will be deflated. The show is too smart for that. But that the lens through which we understand the situation will widen in ways that will force a reassessment of everything we've seen. This is the most exciting phase of any long-running mystery narrative, when the picture starts to become clear enough to understand its broad outlines, while remaining detailed enough to sustain continued exploration. What we can expect from Season 4, based on where Season 3 leaves things, is a continuation of the show's approach to revelation, meaning that answers will come attached to new questions, and that the human drama will remain central, even as the supernatural elements become more explicitly developed. The characters we've followed for 3 seasons are in positions that are genuinely precarious in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and the exploration of those positions should provide dramatic material that is at least as rich as anything the show has delivered before. The character arcs that are most prominently in motion heading into Season 4 are fascinating to contemplate. Boyd's situation at the end of Season 3 has put him in a position where the framework he has used to operate within the town has been fundamentally challenged, and how he reconstructs his understanding and his approach will be one of the most interesting things to watch. Jade's increasing centrality to the mythology of the town and the visions he experiences suggests that his arc in Season 4 will be one of the most dramatic and potentially one of the most revealing. And Tabitha's journey, which has taken her to places that challenge not just her understanding of the town, but her understanding of her own perception, sets up questions about her character that demand exploration. Victor's role in Season 4 is perhaps the most anticipated element for viewers who have been with the show since the beginning. He carries more history with the town than any other living character, and the fragments of that history that have been revealed across 3 seasons suggest that his full story, when it is finally told, will change the way we understand everything else we've seen. The careful, deliberate pace at which the show has been revealing Victor's past suggests that the creative team knows exactly what they have in this character and is intentionally holding it back for maximum effect. The newcomers to the town, whenever they arrive in Season 4, will, as always, bring fresh perspectives that challenge the established understanding of the veterans. One of the show's most reliable dynamics is this contrast between the eyes of those who have been in the situation long enough to have adapted to it and those who are experiencing it for the first time. The veterans have knowledge that newcomers lack, but they also have blind spots that come from familiarity, from having stopped seeing certain things because they've become too accustomed to them. The newcomers see what the veterans have stopped noticing, and both perspectives together provide a more complete picture than either would alone. The question of escape, which has been the central driving objective for many characters across the series, is likely to be complicated further in Season 4. The show has consistently refused to make escape seem either impossible or straightforwardly achievable. Instead, it exists in a state of perpetual possibility, without certainty, the kind of hope that is genuinely sustaining without being falsely reassuring. How this dynamic evolves in Season 4, whether the possibility of escape becomes more concrete or more complicated, or both simultaneously, is one of the most significant open questions heading into the new season. The ethical questions that have run through the series are also set up for further development in Season 4. The show has consistently presented situations where there are no clean answers, where every choice involves trade-offs, and where the distinction between right and wrong is genuinely difficult to determine. This ethical complexity is one of the things that makes the show feel mature and serious, and there's no reason to expect it to simplify in Season 4. If anything, the deeper into the mythology the show gets, the more complex the ethical terrain becomes, as the implications of what is happening in the town become clearer, and as the characters gain more information with which to make their choices. One of the things that's most exciting about Season 4 from a storytelling perspective is the opportunity to explore the history of the town more explicitly. The show has been building toward a fuller account of the town's past across all 3 previous seasons, dropping hints and fragments that suggest a history stretching back much further than the experiences of any current resident. Victor is the closest thing to a direct link to that deeper history, but even his knowledge is incomplete and fragmented. Season 4 seems poised to expand that history in significant ways, which should recontextualize everything we've understood about the town's present. The relationships between characters heading into Season 4 are in states that create enormous dramatic potential. The alliances and tensions that have developed over 3 seasons are complex enough that almost any significant development could ripple through the community in unexpected ways. The show's been careful to develop these relationships with enough depth that the audience genuinely cares about their outcomes, which means that any significant shift in any of them will carry real emotional weight. The dynamic between those who prioritize understanding the town and those who prioritize surviving within it has been one of the ongoing tensions of the series, and it's one that Season 4 will inevitably develop further. As more information about the nature of the town becomes available, the question of what to do with that information becomes more pressing. Understanding and survival are not always complementary objectives, and the decisions that characters make about how to balance them will continue to be a source of both drama and ethical complexity. Let's talk about what the show does with hope, because it's one of its most distinctive and most important qualities. From is not a nihilistic series, despite the darkness of its premise and the genuine horror of many of its elements. It believes in the value of human connection, in the capacity for people to find meaning and dignity, in even the most extreme circumstances, and in the possibility of understanding even the most incomprehensible situations. This is not naive optimism. It's something harder and more meaningful, a commitment to the value of persistence and connection in the face of genuine impossibility. And it's one of the things that keeps the show from being simply a horror exercise and makes it something that resonates on a deeper level. The way the show uses humor, which is not something that's often discussed in analysis of From, is also part of this commitment to a full picture of human experience. There are genuinely funny moments throughout the series, not in spite of the horror, but alongside it, the kind of dark humor that emerges naturally when people who are facing impossible situations retain enough of themselves to recognize the absurdity of what they're dealing with. This humor is never cheap and never undercuts the genuine drama of the situations. It humanizes the characters and reminds us that even in the most extreme circumstances, people remain people, with all the complexity and occasional ridiculousness that implies. The direction of individual episodes across the series has been consistently strong, with different directors bringing their own perspective to episodes while maintaining the visual and tonal consistency that the show requires. This balance between individual creative expression and overall coherence is one that many anthology-style production approaches struggle to achieve, but From manages it with impressive success. The result is a show that feels cinematically consistent across its run while still having individual episodes that stand out as particularly impressive examples of direction. The editing of the series deserves recognition that it doesn't always receive. The way sequences are cut together in From, particularly the sequences that move between different storylines or between present action and flashback material, demonstrates an understanding of how editing creates meaning rather than simply organizing content. The transitions between scenes often carry their own significance, with the juxtaposition of images or sounds creating connections that neither individual scene would suggest on its own. This level of sophistication in the editing is one of the markers of a production that is operating at a genuinely high level of craft. Looking at the series as a whole heading into Season 4, what's remarkable is how well it has maintained its quality and its vision across 3 seasons. Long-running series, especially in the mystery and horror genre, very frequently struggle to maintain the level of engagement and quality that characterized their early seasons. The pressure to keep things fresh while maintaining continuity, to satisfy existing fans while remaining accessible to new viewers, to answer questions while generating new ones, these are enormous challenges that most shows fail to navigate successfully over extended runs. From has navigated them better than almost any comparable series in recent memory. The consistency of vision that runs from the first episode through the Season 3 finale is not something that happens by accident. It requires a creative leadership that knows where the story is going, an ensemble cast that is genuinely committed to their characters, a production team that maintains standards of technical excellence consistently, and a writing team that is capable of building complexity without losing coherence. From has all of these things, which is why it's been able to do what so many similar shows have failed to do. The timing of Season 4, arriving when the audience's engagement with the mythology and the characters is at its highest point, is significant. There's a moment in every long-running mystery series when the accumulated investment of the audience reaches a critical mass, when the payoffs that are available from the narrative are larger than they've ever been, because there's so much invested in every element of the story. From is at that moment right now. The audience knows these characters deeply. The mythology has been built to the point where new developments can reverberate through everything that's come before. And the questions that remain open are the biggest and most fundamental ones the show has raised. The conditions are in place for something genuinely extraordinary. What Season 4 of From has to do, and what the build-up across 3 seasons suggests it's positioned to do, is to take everything that has been established and push it to a level of intensity and significance that feels commensurate with the investment the show has asked of its audience. The payoffs don't all have to come in Season 4. There may be more story to tell after this. But this season needs to demonstrate that the vision the show has been executing is as profound and as coherent as its best moments have suggested. And based on the track record that has been established, there's every reason to believe that it will. The anticipation that surrounds From Season 4 is not the frenzied excitement that surrounds some bigger profile shows. It's something quieter and more serious, the anticipation of an audience that has spent real time and attention with a piece of storytelling and that believes deeply in its quality and in its potential. This is the kind of anticipation that a show earns rather than generates through marketing, and it's one of the clearest signs that From has achieved something genuine with its audience. For anyone who has not yet watched From and is wondering whether to invest the time and attention it requires, the honest answer is that it depends on what you're looking for. If you want something fast-paced and immediately gratifying, this might not be your first choice. But if you want a series that builds something genuinely substantial over time, that treats its audience with intelligence and respect, that uses genre elements in service of serious exploration of human experience, and that delivers emotional and narrative payoffs, that feel truly earned, then From is one of the best things available in television right now. Start from the beginning, give it the attention it asks for, and see what happens. The chances are very good that you'll find yourself exactly where the rest of us are, completely invested and absolutely unable to stop. Season 4 is here. 3 seasons of groundwork, 3 seasons of careful mythology building and character development and mystery deepening have all been leading to this point. Whatever is coming, it's been earned. And if the track record of this show means anything at all, it's going to be worth every second of the wait. All been leading to this point. Whatever is coming, it's been earned. And if the track record of this show means anything at all, it's going to be worth every second of the wait.